couple of eminent theologians in the United States, at least one of which has a show on EWTN, were just fired by the Archbishop of Detroit. For kind of no reason whatsoever, except that he was critical of Francis and accusing him of spreading ambiguity and rejecting the church's moral teaching, thus undermining the authority and teachings of the faith and putting souls at risk. He just got fired. And this is sending shockwaves around because, people are kind of figuring out now that a lot of these new bishops, and this was one of Francis's last appointments, a lot of these new bishops are terrible, absolutely terrible. And it's fact that they managed to climb through the hierarchy to the point where they're now ordinaries of dioceses is raising concerns from people. Look at the National Catholic Register, not exactly a hardcore outlet or anything. The headline, "Shake Up in Detroit. New Archbishop fires Ralph Martin and Eduardo Echeverria." The dismissal of Martin and Eduardo Echeverria, who had both critiqued what they perceived, as doctrinal ambiguity under Pope Francis, is already generating controversy. Of course it's generating controversy. These guys, they're both very high-profile figures in the church in America when it comes to teaching, and they're not flamethrowers of radical traditionalism. These are just typical conservative Catholic voices. They probably have more in common with the Catholic Answers crowd than with Chris Jackson over, over on Substack, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Very mainstream voices. And they got silenced for pointing out the obvious. Two prominent theologians who critiqued what they saw as doctrinal ambiguity under the late Pope Francis have been fired from their longtime posts at the Archdiocese of Detroit's major seminary by the local archbishop, the Register has confirmed. Archbishop Edward Weisenberger removed Ralph Martin and Eduardo Echeverria from their positions at Sacred Heart Seminary on July 23rd. Both theologians told the Register separately. In a statement to Renewal, the Catholic Charismatic Apostolate, founded and led by Martin, the theologian described his sudden termination as a shock, noting his 23 years of contributions to the seminary. He wrote that when he asked Archbishop Weisenberger for an explanation, the Detroit ordinary, quote, said he didn't think it would be helpful to give any specifics, but mentioned something about having concerns about my theological perspectives. Pause here for a second. You notice that the censor, that was when we're talking tech and anybody in government of any kind with power, when they do this, they don't like to tell you why. They don't like to give you specifics. You would expect a Prince of the Apostles to give you specifics, to make things unambiguous and clear. He's a shepherd. He's supposed to be a teacher of the faith. You would think that if there's a theological problem, that he would be upfront about it. After all, the salvation of souls is the highest law of the church. And if you are saying that there's a theological problem with one of your seminary professors, that seminary professor, for the good of his soul, should know the errors he's making. And of course, it's also a matter of justice. He should know what he's done. But there's no justice right now. This archbishop is a little different than the tech overlord with his censorship pen. Martin added that he was sharing these details because his colleagues and friends were owed an explanation, adding that he wanted to be truthful, but that he did not, quote, want to unnecessarily contribute to current polarization in the church. Echeverria told the Register no reason had been provided to him for his termination, and that he cannot say more due to signing a non-disclosure agreement. When contracted for more information, Sacred Heart referred to the Register to the Archdiocese of Detroit. Holly Fournier, Associate Director of Communications, said the Archdiocese of Detroit does not comment on archdiocesan or seminary personnel matters. The firing of the theologians, which is already generating outcry online, is the latest controversial move by Archbishop Weisenberger since his March 18th installation as Ordinary of the Motor City, following his appointment by Pope Francis. In June, the Archbishop barred 13 parish churches from celebrating the traditional Latin Mass, while also banning the ad orientem posture for Novus Ordo liturgies in the Archdiocese. By the way, that was an illegal move by the Archbishop. It was. You go read the general instruction of the Roman Missal, which is the instruction manual for saying the new Mass. Guess what? There are times where it tells the priest to turn around and face the people when doing specific prayers, as if the default position in the Novus Ordo was, by design, ad orientem. What he was doing was a violation of the governing rules of the Mass. But because we live in a time where bishops are seen as basically the dictator of their diocese, he can get away with it, and he will. So keep these two theologians in your prayers. They probably are going to need it, especially since one of them has an EWTN show. And we know that EWTN has been under the sights of the bishops for a long time. That it was too conservative for them. Even though really it's only a handful of shows on EWTN that is traditionally minded. Most of EWTN is safe content. There's a few shows that aren't safe by the powers that be standards, and it's those that they will come after next. Now, we'll wrap this up here with this from Catholic Culture. They were reporting on this too. This is the relevant part. Quote, both Martin and Echeverria have taught at Sacred Heart Seminary for more than 20 years. Both have also published widely in defense of the perennial teachings of the Church. Martin, who is a regular speaker at national and even international Catholic events, as well as the host of the EWTN show, The Choices We Face, had written in his 2021 book, A Church in Crisis, that Pope Francis was causing widespread confusion by his ambiguous statements on moral issues. Echeverria had recently posted an essay on The Catholic Thing, in which he argued that Pope Francis had undermined Catholic teaching on marriage. End quote. This comes from X, posted on his personal account by Dr. Edward Peters. My Sacred Heart Major Seminary teaching contract was terminated by Archbishop Weissenberger this week. I have retained counsel. That means he's got a lawyer. Except to offer my prayers for those affected by this news and to ask for theirs in return, I have no further comment at this time. He even signed his own post. Dr. Edward Peters, who is a canon lawyer. And so please pray for him. And this process, he says here, I have retained counsel, meaning he has a lawyer. That is 3 of these men who have been terminated there for the high crime of teaching the Catholic faith in a way that's identifiably Catholic to men who are going to be priests. You might expect that the response to this has been something else entirely. So we go here, Dr. Edward Feeser, who is he is himself a professor of philosophy, Thomist, posted this in response on X. He says, what is being done to Ed Peters, Ralph Martin, and Eduardo Echeverria is an outrage. This looks like a Saturday Night Massacre style purge of those faithful to the tradition of the Church. And there are some other responses that I won't show you, including one from Mike Lewis of Where Peter Is, gloating over their termination. Remember, traditionalists are the bad ones. We're the bad ones, not the people who gloat over conservative people who accept the post-conciliar reforms, but who want everything, who try to teach Catholic things, getting fired. We're all the troubled ones, not people who gloat over others losing their jobs. I wouldn't even gloat over Mike Lewis losing his job if he was able to lose a job right now. I wouldn't do it. But that's just where we are. Eric Salmons posted this also. Crisis Magazine. Find him online on numerous places. He says, he has just heard from a source of his that Ed Peters, the first American to be appointed to the Apostolic Signatura, has also been fired from Sacred Heart Seminary. If this is true, then it clearly means there's a purge of faithful professors from the seminary. Diabolical. All being done by Archbishop Edward Weissenberger. Why? Simple. I can tell you exactly why. Because we're in the consolidation phase now of synodality. The synodal process is about change, implementing permanent change through dialogue, through those mechanisms described by Pope Pius X as part of the heresy of modernism, through this dialogue accompaniment process about the personal lived experience of faith. And part of that is you can't have hardline teachings on contraception, marriage, all the rest of it. Recall, Dr. Ralph Martin got in trouble because he pointed out that under Francis, you start having a lot of ambiguities about things like holy matrimony and morality of the flesh and other things, and that this ambiguity leads souls astray. Now he's fired. That's where we are. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't give credit where it was due. Viewer of this channel, Rod Halverson, posted this on X. Basically, he's saying here is something everyone is missing, is that Dr. Swennens, one of the people at Vatican II, joyfully called Vatican II the French Revolution in the Church. He actually called it that in like a positive way. As such, as follow the exact same process as all such revolutions. And basically saying is, it's time for like conservative Catholics who are fine with the Novus Ordo, fine with Vatican II itself. We all got to start working together with, traditionalists and conservatives and people in between need to start working together, because at the end of the day, every revolution follows the same true revolution. Every real revolution. Go look at, 1917 or France. Go look at those. And they always go the same way. After you have a revolution, the new order of things breaks into two factions, and those two factions may be several factions working as a coalitions together, but there are two factions. Kind of a left-wing one and kind of a right-wing one. That's where the left and right comes from, the post-French Revolution order of things. And typically after a revolution, they consolidate their power by getting rid of first the old order, the remnants of the old order, as your traditionalists today. But then the progressive types get control and they start going after their former allies, or they're just people who are too rigid. You saw that in the French Revolution. Eventually, he says, revolutions eat their own. And I'm not saying Dr. Ralph Martin or, Ed Peters or any of them are revolutionaries. But they support the official hermeneutic of continuity understanding of Vatican II. And Francis got rid of the hermeneutic of continuity. He did. He chastised people who used it. He said Vatican II is being fully implemented by the Synod on Synodality. Once you get rid of that hermeneutic of continuity, you've got a problem, a very real one. That's why they keep using the language of the new synodal church. We saw Cardinal Hollerich use that language all the time. Cardinal Gresh, the two men running the synod. You had Cardinal Roach even talk about how the traditional Mass, the pre-Vatican II Mass, was not compatible with the new ecclesiology of the church after Vatican II. Ecclesiology being a fancy term meaning the theology of the church. Its relationship to the world, its relationship to humanity, its relationship to God. All those things changed fundamentally at Vatican II, according to these men. These are revolutionary men. Now, whether the church's ecclesiology changed at Vatican II, I'll leave that to more traditionally minded theologian who can give you a good argument for that. But it's clear these men believe that. So it's time, I think, for the bickering among people who just want Catholicism. We can debate what that actually means, but maybe we should lay aside the internal bickering, because they are going in the process now of consolidating their power. And that means getting rid of everybody who had been, like, just 2 weeks ago, been fine in the establishment of things, but who have too much of an old order view of things. They're getting rid of them. And it's unfortunate. None of those men are bad men. They're all good men. They all care about the salvation of souls. It's what you would want from laymen who work in a seminary, who teach priests how to be priests. It's what you would want. There's a real care for souls. Curious what you think about all this in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on the social media helps a lot too. Pray for everybody we spoke about today, including Archbishop Weissenberger. I'm not trying to make you mad at him. He's doing a really good job doing that all on his own. Pray for Dr. Ed Peters, Dr. Ralph Martin, Dr. Eduardo Echeverria. They will need it. They're all men with families now looking at unemployment. I don't think they'll have a hard time finding work, but it depends on how far that consolidation has gone. Because it could end up being that a memo has gone out to the other seminaries telling them, get with the program. We'll find out all together. I don't think we've heard the end of this story. And as always, I pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.